Hi there! Today's video is all about working in limited spaces, which is basically what I do. My lab and my computer workstation are both carved in a couple of very tiny spots down in the basement of my home. There isn't much space for working, not to mention to store the materials and the components I use in my experiments and projects. To somebody that sees my setup for the first time, it may seem that I am a hoarder because of the many things present in such a small space. But once you think of what I do and the needs for it, everything becomes more clear. I would even push it saying it is a fascinating place to work in, but I'm not really sure anybody else would agree on that. My wife doesn't complain and doesn't say anything just because I am out of the way and I don't disrupt the order of things in the house. So here it is. I'm going to show you my whole working space and I'm very curious to see your comments about it, so please don't forget to post your impressions. Hi there! I am Carlo Carrano and this is Electronics Engineering Made Easy. Let's start with the workstation where I do all the work for video and audio editing, circuits designs, graphics, research and many other things. I like to have 3 monitors to do all this work and so I can have everything under control simultaneously. There is a very small space available on the desk itself, but it is enough for my needs. And maybe I should just do some cleanup more often. And here is the lab, which is located in an adjacent small room in the basement. Let's do a 360 degrees view of it. Now, the space is not much, unfortunately I have no way of devoting more to it, but it fits my needs. And because it is so small, I make sure that there is no waste of space. Even the smallest area is filled with stuff, from ground to ceiling, and I even use the ceiling itself, as you can see. Here is one of the 2 latest additions to the workbench. It is a digital multimeter capable of the most various measurements with high precision. Let me know in the comments, by the way, if you want me to dedicate some videos to the instruments themselves, what I have and how I use them. This other one is the second addition to my lab, a nice frequency counter that goes up to 1.5 GHz. Here on the left there are instruments that you have already seen in various videos. Here are a couple of DC power supplies. The one on the left is one that I bought, while the other one I made it myself from the PSU unit of an old computer. But I'm still thinking of building a third one, a linear power supply, to have a cleaner voltage than these switching units can provide. Here is what I call my smoxinator, which I basically use to filter out the fumes generated during the soldering of components. This one is just a clock. Here is a dual-channel oscilloscope with 100 MHz bandwidth. This oscilloscope works also as a digital analyzer, although I never use this functionality in my videos, at least so far. Here is my function generator. It is a cheap instrument, but it is more than enough to cover all my needs, at least currently. On top of it, you can see the noise generator I built some time ago, and for which I made a whole video. The function generator is also capable to generate noise, but it is done with a pseudo-random generator, which is digital, and I found that it doesn't provide a true white and pink noise. So at the end, my own analog noise generator seems to work better. Hidden almost behind the function generator sits my lab computer, which I made out of a Raspberry Pi 4 that uses a solid-state disk instead of the usual SD card. Since this Raspberry Pi has a USB 3 port, this solution makes the whole thing much faster, and it is also much more reliable than an RPi using an SD card. The monitor for the RPi computer is this huge Samsung display sitting on top of the digital multimeter. Going to the left, here is a little shelf filled with a number of little devices I built over time. All of them were the subject of their own videos, of course. On the bench there is still the circuit from my previous video, which I am still working on it for the final refinement of the VCO design for the synth project. And you can see that it is seated along the audio amplifier and the speaker that I previously built, also featured in a couple of my previous videos. This one is my main soldering station, the one I use to build circuits on PCBs and perf boards. It is not one of the costly professional ones, but it does its job very well, keeping the soldering iron tip at a constant temperature that I can adjust at will, depending on what I'm dealing with. On its side there are some materials ready for when I need them at a moment's notice. Rosin in liquid and paste form, soldering wire of different kinds and thickness, and tools to clean the iron tips. Also there are lots of pencils and markers and highlighters, very handy in many situations. On top of the shelf with the devices I recently built, there is another shelf with binders, containing various papers and datasheets that I often use for reference while working in the lab. And on this old bathroom cabinet hanging on the wall, you can see several containers with components for my projects. I even printed some cable holders that I attached to the top and the bottom of the cabinet to hold the cables that are handy when testing circuits on the workbench, so I don't have to untangle them from a drawer nearby. Underneath the cabinet there is some space for even another little shelf, where a few small drawers are installed, full of useful components. This one, for example, is full of CMOS digital integrated circuits, and at the left there is another drawer with electromechanical supplies. In between the two sets of drawers there is a bunch of small boxes full of other stuff. At some point I'll make some drawers for this stuff too. Here behind the door I put more cable hangers for more cables that are used for the various instruments that sit on the workbench. Note how I used up the whole height of the door to line up all the cables. Here are more drawers, and they hold resistors, more capacitors, and a bunch of semiconductor components. The drawers on top in particular contain digital TTL ICs. Right on the left of these drawers sits my 3D printer. I make a great use of it for many different things, from boxes for the projects to special parts, even for the panels for my ongoing synth project. This printer is an old ANET A8, which I assembled from a kit a few years ago, but it still works perfectly. Underneath the 3D printer there is another big shelf, which is mostly for materials for printing and spare parts for the printer. And here on top of the printer there are more shelves and boxes, and even above the door opening to maximize the storage space. You can see boxes with spare PCBs used in my projects, a couple of lab instruments, and even a few cans of spray paint for the panels of the project. And then there are more chemicals on top of the bathroom cabinet, like the ferric chloride to etch the PCBs that I make by myself. And there you can see a few more little shelves made out of 3D printed project boxes that did not work as expected. Well, why throw away all that plastic if I can reuse it, right? On these little shelves there are more components and more instruments, of course. And since there was some little space between the door and the drawer's box, here on the left, I used it to hang some more stuff that I use in lab, like for example this simple but effective microscope that can be attached to a computer to see the enlargements on its display, and even to take snapshots of such enlargements. Here are some copper clad, both single and double layer, and of course some perf boards. And here is another shelf system on the left of the 3D printer, full of stuff of course, and some big drawers on casters so I can leave them on the floor of the small room, but I can move them around when I need that particular space. More tools here, hanging from this panel, and a whiteboard. Sometimes I use it to draw some simple stuff when I have to quickly solve a small problem, but most of the time I have diagrams and various pieces of paper hanging from it for quick consultation. Back on the corner of the workbench there is more storage for various stuff. I even recycled some wheels from 3D printing filament to build this other cylindrical container with multiple drawers, which rotates on its axis to easily reach all the contents. And here is another drawer's box. This one I use it for small mechanical components rather than electronic components. I need those too for my projects, of course. and more shelves directly sitting on the edge of the bench to store more stuff, like more instruments, wires, sensors and other components. Here is a little Dremel tower, very useful to work on small details and make holes in the PCBs I build. A soldering gun right over here, and of course more shelves hanging at the very top of the wall to create storage space close to the ceiling. Note also all the power outlets in front of the edge of the bench to easily power any circuit device that does not permanently sit on the bench, as well as the circuits that I build. I even created a workspace on top of a sink here on the left. You can see the board that I put on top of it to have even more workspace available when I need it. The board of course is short enough to leave a gap, so I can still use the sink without wetting anything, and of course I can remove the board. Here in the cabinet, protected by a small glass door, there are a few more chemicals that I use in some of my projects. And finally, here is a hook I created to hang the video camera on top of the workbench to be able to shoot videos while working on it. Okay, now you have it. What do you think about it? Would you be able to work in such a small space? And even making videos in it? How big is your working space? How much time you dedicate to electronics? Please comment, I would really like to know. And don't forget to give me a thumb up and to subscribe if you haven't done so already. I will see you in the next video, and in the meantime, happy experiments!